Okay. All right, cool. Well, we're here on the platform, and it's been a while, man. You've been to Florida. You look a little red, but so we don't have any. I mean, you got some notes, but we didn't talk about what this is going to be about. All I know is that it's going to go into something good. But okay, so this is the platform. This is our second video recording. We typically just did audio, and now we're going to start doing video. Production quality is at a 9 or 10.
I'd say a solid 6.
Yeah, but who cares? We're gonna get taken care of that. We're gonna take care of that with time. So, gosh, dude, I mean, what we just cover so much good stuff, and it's gonna get better. But so recap.
Yeah.
Go ahead, recap.
Well, I was going to ask you. I mean, we can recap, but I was going to ask you. Let's just say it's been 2 weeks, right? Like, what for sake of argument, it's been 2 weeks. So, like, what's been? Yeah. So, what's been going on with you for the last 2 weeks as far as subconscious reprogramming?
So, subconscious programming and learning.
Let me say one thing, because you did say recap. So I was just talking to a friend on the way over here, and as I, talking to her about what we're doing, and so she didn't know anything about it, and so I kind of gave her, a recap, if you will. And what I want to say is, like, we're trying to be holistically healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and we're seeking truth to do those 4 things to be healthy. And so what you and I have landed on is that right now we find it the most beneficial, or the most benefit is to retrain our subconscious, because we have to start there, because our subconscious, everybody's subconscious, is full of sabotaging and self-limiting thoughts and beliefs. Okay. And they happen without our control by the time we're 7, by what we observe around us, and what we see, what we hear, and what we experience from the time that before we're born, as we're in the womb, and until we're 7. We get a database of beliefs, programmed in our subconscious that we're not even aware of. And so if you don't believe you're worthy of love, that will manifest itself in your life, and you may not even be aware that you believe that you're not worthy of love. Right. And so what we're talking about is at a really ground level is retraining our subconscious, reprogramming our subconscious mind to believe empowering beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we've been talking about. And there are a lot of different things that apply to that. I mean, so many things. We talked about immutable laws. We talked about the power of belief. We talked about words of affirmation, hypnosis, frequencies and all that. But at the heart of it, we're talking about retraining our subconscious so that we can move forward and achieve the goals that we've set in our life. So how's that been working for you in the last 2 weeks?
So, well, one thing that I've learned is not to identify with goals and targets. I don't identify with them. For me, I used to have very big visions, and that was my target. And if I wasn't on that path or seeing signs of achieving that, I was essentially in dissonance with my spirit, my mind, and I think that's probably, I can't speak for everybody because I don't know everybody, but because we say, oh, most people, but we don't go and talk to most people. We talk to 8 people.
Most people in our circle.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I'm telling you, I think that was the biggest issue with me, was always being in dissonance, because I had expectations and then I had my reality, and I didn't like how they weren't aligned. Yeah. And we have that constant feedback where we observe the world and we say, well, either that person's like that, I want to be like that, but I'm not like that, or I want to be like this, but I'm not like that when I look at my current reality. And so goals for me now, I don't set them high. I don't mean I don't put big goals. I just mean that I I don't associate my identity with them. They're just tasks, like a grocery list. Just if you have a few things, write them down and just do them. So for me, when you want to talk about subconscious programming and believing, to me, when I write down a goal, it's already done, and so I just go achieve it. Like for example, today I went to that course because that's just something that I wanted to do. I had wanting to go to this course, and it's something that I could have been like, oh, you know what? I'll just put it on next week. I'm too busy. I don't do that. I say if I scheduled it, I just do it, even if I don't want to do it. Remember we were talking about that. You don't want to do it, but when you come up with an idea, when you're brainstorming and your mind's in the clouds and you're like, oh, that's so cool. It's so cool. That looks so great. I can't wait to get there. When you finally get to the days when you have to start putting in the action, it's not as fun. It's like, okay, now you got to do the work. So for me, it's remember that the whole high moment of having the vision, it's temporary. Just get over it, and then but you look forward. And so, um, I'm telling you, Tom, the most important thing for me is to remain whole and not be anxious for anything. Because then, if you do something, or if you have a goal, and maybe you did put it off for the next day, let's just say, or you put effort into it and you're not seeing results right away, then you're like, oh my gosh, like things are working out, something be wrong. Not at all. It's just a process, and for me, it's don't get anxious about anything, and put forth the work, do your thing. And so when I start to feel that feeling of unease, of dissonance, then I know I'm doing something wrong. And that's my objective perspective, just listening, observing my thoughts and how I feel. I'm saying, oh, I'm not going to dwell on that emotion. Yeah. I feel like I failed. Well, we don't dwell on it. Just keep going. So that's my like now default state. Yeah. Whereas back in the past, I would dwell in those moments of failure or not feeling adequate and all those. You dwell in it and it just gets worse, and it causes depression, and man, it can go to horrible places. So it's like, no, don't even worry about that. So for me, it's important. Well, what do you identify with? And that's a whole nother, like that's a big conversation. But so yeah.
So how's that worked out for the last 2 weeks?
Great. I mean, I feel very, very good. My spirit's high. I constantly focus on what for me is the thing that needs to be, that is God. I'm just gonna say God. That's my focus. And so everything else is just worldly. I got tasks, cool. I got things I got to do, cool. I got chores, cool. But anytime that I start feeling anxious or I get mad or angry, I'm realizing that I'm putting my faith in the world. Yep. And it's like, so you're on the wrong path. So that's how it's been going for me. How about you?
Well, I want to talk about what you just said. It's interesting because as Connor and I are talking to you guys and talking to each other, on the way over here, I told you that about the book that I'm reading, The Honeymoon Effect by Bruce Lipton, which is life-changing. Like, I mean, just such a great book. And I don't know how far along I'm into it because I got the audio version because I drove to Florida and with 2 teenagers. So, I wasn't able to listen to it the whole ride. But, and so I didn't even check the audio book. I don't even know how many chapters are in the book. I just hit play. I don't even, like time. Each chapter, which isn't a chapter, it's a track. Okay. Each track is a certain time, and like it'll be like, okay, now we're in a chapter this, but it doesn't line with the track. So I might be on like track 9, chapter 4. I got you. But it's life changing, and it's interesting. The reason I wanted to talk about what you just said is because at first, what you said almost like flies in the face of goal achievement, right? Like it didn't, but it started to, because it was like, oh, I don't make goals, or I don't have goals. But that's not what you said. You're like, I don't identify with goals. Yes. And it's crazy that you said that. Not crazy, but mind-blowing, because a lot of these people that are talking about achieving things, like we'll reference Asraf. Is it John?
John Astor.
Yeah, John Asraf a lot. And because he's a pioneer and a patriarch with this whole thing. And even he will say, like, mini goals. Like, have a big goal, right? Like, I have a big goal of building a house and paying it off by the time I'm 45. Okay, so that's if you don't have that vision, then you're just going to go wherever you want, and wherever life takes you. So that you have to have goals, and then set reachable and trackable mini goals to get there, right? So like, I can't just build a house with no money, right? I can't build a house if I don't know where I'm going to build it and what it's going to look like. So, okay, by this time in 2 months, I'm just making these up, but this time in 2 months, I'll start to identify what I want the architecture to look like. And then I'll come up, in 2 more months, I'll come up with a budget of what it's going to take and then how many acres I want. And, and then I can have small goals, really attainable goals that are measurable, and then not feel like a loser. That's how I feel when I'm looking at the overarching thing, which is I resonated with what you were saying because it wasn't until my drive home after listening to the tracks that I've listened to that I realized that I didn't articulate it this way, but I have been identifying with my achievements. I've only been on this track as far as like the power of belief for, let's just say, a month now, right? And so I have been pretty aggressive with writing a regiment and trying to stick to it. Like, wake up, and for the first 2 hours of my day, I have a routine that I want to hit, and then goals. And so, especially because of vacation, I haven't done hardly any of them, but I continue to work out. Like, remember last time I told you that I've been writing my future wife that I don't know, but I know that she exists. And I was journalizing every night, and I took my journal with me to Florida, and I didn't do it one night. And I just felt like such a loser for not doing it. And then I kept like justifying it. I was like, you know what? I'll just, like, next time I do write her, I'm just going to say, hey, I really dropped the ball. You see the dates because I date them. Like, I haven't written you in a week. Yeah. You knew I was going to Florida. Like, but I'm doing that more for me as a habit. And so I check myself, because one of the things that Bruce Lipton said in this book, and you just hit on it unbeknown to you, is that when our conscious mind is operating, okay, if it is daydreaming, then and when it's like in a thought that is not the here and now. And so remember how we were talking about, like, I don't know how that works, because you're operating out of your subconscious 95% of the time, you're operating out of your conscious 5% of the time. So how, like, when does your subconscious kick in? And so what I've discovered is that your subconscious kicks in when you're conscious about things that are taking your focus. And so if you're daydreaming, right, and you're consciously thinking about that goal or vision, and you're driving, because that's a great analogy, right? And you're driving as you're daydreaming, that's when your subconscious kicks in, and you're not even realizing what your subconscious is telling you to do. It's just doing it. You're on autopilot. And so what Bruce said is, one of the first things that you should do is be aware of what your subconscious is telling you. And so I was doing that on the drive home, and I was like, it's really hard to do. I'm like trying to be conscious of what I'm thinking and what my subconscious is telling me that I am. And so when I'm sitting there thinking, like, oh, if I'm telling myself that I'm a loser because I didn't write, in that journal every day, like, that's my subconscious telling me that. And that's part of, like you said, to put it aside. And Bruce even says to, like, acknowledge it, say thank you, or I don't know how he phrased it, but like, okay, I acknowledge that, goodbye. like, and then to reframe it. And that is so powerful, because then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, first of all, I can't believe I'm doing this task. And second of all, I can't believe I'm as far along in it as I am and committed to it, because the Tom Baker 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever, was lost. And so then you start reframing it and be like, and you start saying, well, no, I'm actually doing really good. I'm actually getting a lot better. I am healthy. Like, I am, more aware than I've ever been. And so you reframe that subconscious thought. And then eventually, the more that you do that, and then you're aware of it, it becomes normal. And that, you just said it, like the last 2 weeks, it's like, that's your new norm. Like, that is your new norm, to like, to start feeling anxious, as you put it, and then to recognize it, and to be like, well, I'm doing something wrong if I'm anxious, like, sorry, goodbye. And it wasn't until my drive home, where I wasn't really doing anything but driving and trying to stay awake, that I really put this into practice, and was like, what am I thinking? And there was a moment where I got hit pretty hard with some depressing thoughts just about the past, and revolving around marriage and divorce. And I had to really consciously work at like saying no, like, get out, like, I don't want that depressing thought. And then for me, I quickly went to my kids, and I just focused on them. And I was like, man, how great is it that I have these kids, and that they're healthy and all this stuff. And then, whatever, 10, 15 minutes later, it was gone.
Man, see, that's why there's so much power in, you've heard of the saying, attitude of gratitude.
Yes.
And when I get into states like that, I just start, well, first off, the whole identity thing's great too, but what I love doing too, if you, like, when I come into moments where I'm like, okay, well, things are kind of in a neutral state, where I don't really have a task that I'm trying to go after, or nobody's trying to get me to do something. If I'm like just in a neutral state, then I make sure that I really find peace in that state, and I just stay in gratitude, even for like the most menial things. Like, man, I'm so glad I have these pants on right now. I love that I have 2 eyes right now. And if you don't have 2 eyes, well, then find something to be grateful for, because there's always something. Always something. You have to be dead, and even if you were dead, you're somewhere, and so be grateful for that. So I feel like that is so good, because look, man, Lipton talks about this. He said, and I just read it in the book, The Biology of Belief. I was at the bookstore. I was flipping through a couple pages. I don't have it in my possession yet, but I will. He talks about how our language actually really hindered and hinders our true natural vibratory state. How we express so much through words, but typically it's like when we talk, we kind of just like hover on this pretty low vibrational plane. Like today, I stopped by the Tinderbox after. Tinderbox is a tobacco place. I had smoked a pipe, and I was talking to, as a Dave or Mike or whoever one of those guys is, one of the workers there. We were talking, and the conversation was just kind of like just like the typical talk you have with somebody in public that you don't really know. Yeah, kill time talk, and it was just like the vibrational state was just like this. And so one thing that I think is very, very important is to be very in tune with your feelings. And I like how Bruce Lipton uses animals as a example, because they say animals don't speak your language, but man, they know your vibrational state. Yeah. So like when you walk into a house and there's a dog that's like, there's something wrong with that guy, I feel fear on him, I'm going to either run away or growl at him, or I'm going to approach him, because I can tell what his vibration is. And I'm telling you, man, vibration, I think, is the best language. Because if I'm a con artist and I'm trying to talk you to doing something.
Yeah.
You're listening to my words, but what's your vibrational state telling you? What's my vibration that you're feeling making you feel? Like what is that feeling? And be able to identify that. And so to feel that within ourselves, I think that's key. Like, man, if you could go a day without saying a word, just not saying a word, and just observe yourself as you live throughout the day and see how you react to things. Like if you see somebody in a specific way, or you observe people interacting, you're driving, how are you responding to things? And if you were to translate that into vibrations, well, what feels positive or what's negative? Are you neutral? Are you just feel like crap? Why? And so I think that's massive, and Lipton talks about that so much, and I think that's a true universal language.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that you said that, because in the book, one of his starting stories, and I have a feeling he's going to keep bringing it up, is how he moved somewhere and he had a neighbor, and he, from what I've gathered so far, I didn't know him from Adam, and just had this really bad feeling about the guy. And because of what he knew at the time, which was very limited on this path that he was going down, was to overcome that. And because clearly it was something wrong with him sensing this, because this guy was great on the outside. He was very generous and all this stuff. And there was just something about him that he just didn't like. He just didn't like him and was getting bad vibes. And he actually went out of his way and into his consciousness to overcome that. And then he talks about how the guy was like really nice and helped him move all this stuff when the day that Lipton moved out of town, and like took shipments, like truckloads of his stuff to the post office, because Lipton, I guess, had to get out of town sooner than he wanted to, and mailed it to his new place, and did all these other things, only to find out that the guy was a con artist. Never mailed anything, took it all, and vanished.
Wow.
And he was like, he said this basically the same things that you're saying. He's like, we can't ignore our feelings, and we have to be aware of them. And he's like, look, if you sense that somebody's a bad person, like, navigate through that with caution, because sometimes you can be wrong and whatnot. But a personal testimony to what you're saying is, and it's hard, it's easier said than done to take a bad vibration that you're having because of a bad thought, bad day, etc., and change it. It's possible. We can change those. Like Lipton says that the positive frequencies are stronger than the negative. And so when I was on vacation this week, one of the thoughts that I had as I was people watching, and this is a reoccurring thought of mine, because I'm very childlike by nature. That's just generally how I am. It's this idea of how children can go up in a play yard and just go up to anybody and start a conversation and a game. I see it all the time. I'm in areas with ministry, children's ministry, and with my kids' school, and with my children at parks. I see this all the time on a weekly basis, where my kids, my two younger kids, will start conversations or be playful to strangers, etc. And so I have tried to consciously adopt that, where I can do that with adults. Like just go up and start a conversation and be friendly, and not be so self-conscious, of how I look or how I come across or whatever. And it didn't hurt that I was on vacation this week while I was doing this, but I was like, okay, I went with my two teenagers, so bedtime comes around, they can't go out to the 21 and over places, but I'm not ready for bed, so I'm definitely going out to the nightlife. And so I go out there and I'm nervous, right? Like, even though me, like I'm a social person, I'm pretty unashamed, like pretty outgoing, I'm still self-conscious of like, how do I look? Like, I'm going to be the only person, like I'm going into a club, a night bar, a restaurant or whatever, not like a dance club, but a bar that serves alcohol, by myself, in Siesta Key, Florida. Like, usually people go down there in groups or couples or whatever. And so I went in there and I was like feeling a little self-conscious of how I was, but I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like I'm going to own this. Like I'm me. Like that's all I can be. And so it's interesting because every night that I went out, I had a fantastic time. The vibrations that I put off attracted the same vibrations, and I met some of the coolest people. I mean, I went to Savannah, Georgia on my last night. So from Florida to here is like, let's just say it's a 20-hour drive, and I wanted to break it up in 10-hour segments. So, and I want to live in Savannah, Georgia. So I wanted to go check it out. And it was everything that I'd hoped it to be. So I was in Savannah, Georgia by myself, and I go up and buy a cigar, and you can't smoke in the cigar shop. It was one of those just tobacco shops. So I was like, crap, where can I smoke? Well, in Savannah, Georgia, it's a lot different than Ohio. You can smoke in the bar areas. You can smoke next to established restaurants and whatnot. Where in Ohio, you can't be within like 50 feet of an entrance or something. And so the lady was like, hey, there are 2 places that have patios right down the street, and I have my skateboard, so I just skated right down there, and I was feeling like real cool about it, like having a good time, had a cigar, was going to go find this place. And I came to 2 places, and I was like checking the vibes out, right? I went to the first place and like just walked on the patio and was checking the scene out, walked to the second place, and the first place that I went to had a TV out there and had a better scene. So I went there, went up to the bar and ordered a beer, and I ended up meeting this worker named Sarah that it was our first day working there, so she was training. She was getting off at 10, and we just had the greatest conversation, and when she got off work, she hung out with me, and me and one of her friends went to this dive bar and listened to a live concert and played pool. And it was just like, it was like, oh my gosh, that happens in the movies, and it wasn't anything romantic, and but it was great. Like, it was just such a great feeling, and it's just a testament to what you were saying. Like, she sensed good vibrations, whether she knew it or not, and I was putting out good vibrations because I was in a really good place, and the law of attraction, and it ended up like I set out to have a great night and ended up having a great night, and it happened every night that I was in Florida. Every night I met somebody that I had a great conversation with.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how it typically seems like people who are on vacation just naturally, you get into conversations with people because you're in that vibrational state. You're like, hey, I'm on vacation, so I'm all light and I don't have to be burdened. And it's funny how that seems to be the tendency maybe for a lot who just go on vacation. But when you come back to like the drudgeries of your routine life that you may not like, then it's kind of, you hit this lower vibrational state. You're not outgoing. It's like, well, why can't you be just as outgoing as the place down the street than having to go somewhere far away? Yeah. But
we don't have to elaborate on this, but remember when we were laughing so hard in Maine and that guy came up to us and he's like,
yeah, he came up to us. He was like, "What are you guys laughing at?"
And then funny.
Yeah, he sat and talked to us for a little bit.
So talk about the law of attraction.
Oh yeah, I know. He literally.
Like, I want some of
yeah,
that.
He saw us. We were hurling about something that the bartender said, and or that we were saying, and then it was funny. And then the guy just literally got out of his seat, came over, was like, "Well, so funny." And then he talked to us for like a good 5-10 minutes or whatever. Yeah, so that's awesome, and I think that's key because. Look, you tend to vibrate at the level of your environment. And so if we are at jobs that we don't like or exposing ourselves to bad programming, media, energies, radio, music, that's just you might listen to it because it makes you feel good because you can relate to the sad story, but it's like, well, why do it? You're putting yourself at a lower vibration, and I understand how it feels good to feel like, hey, you're not alone in your struggles, but you have to eventually get out of that because you're just going to consistently be in that lower vibrational state. And, but so that's all good, man. Like that's, I think it's a huge key of how to start kind of directing yourself in this world, and then it's like, okay, well, so then what's the next thing? It's like once you start getting good at, hey, these emotions are bad. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm going to just not focus on them. They'll come, but then they'll go just as fast as they came. And I'm going to perpetually stay at this higher vibration, good vibes, positive thinking. You know, positive thinking is a kind of a cheesy word, but, and so then it's like, okay, well, so what's the next thing? You know, what's the next, where do you start to, once you start seeing the world like this and start becoming that, then it's like, okay, so then now does the world just become like a smorgasbord of great things to just go and do? It's like, okay, well, so how do we graduate? Should we graduate? Is that necessary? If so, then where are we going?
Well, I think it goes without saying that most people are just surviving. Okay, so
You know, most people.
yeah, that's why I said it goes without saying that, like, most people, I think you could argue that most people are just surviving, just going through life and not thriving. And so, yeah, like, just, you know, doing a job that they're not necessarily happy with, or, you know, doing things in life that they're not necessarily happy with. And a lot of that has to do with how you frame, you know, your plot in life, because everybody can, it's, you know, the law of relativity that we were talking about, like, you can always compare your life to somebody that's got it worse, right, and you can always compare your life to somebody that has it better, but you can always find great things that you can be grateful for in your life. And so, okay, so now you're aware and you start casting these great vibrations, whatever, and you're feeling good, you're on cloud nine, but like indefinitely, you're at a good place. So your question is like, where do you go from that? And here's my answer. It's stop just surviving and start thriving. And let's just say this. I don't think that this is actually true. I don't believe this. But let's just say that everybody has a destiny as far as what they're meant to be and do vocationally, like for a job, to bring in finances, to do the things that they want to do. So and like I said, that doesn't apply to everybody, because I don't think that exists, that you're like, everybody has just one thing that they were meant to do. But let's just assume that for now, I think the answer is to find out what that one thing is. Because when you're in survival mode, you will work a job that you don't like because you think that's what life is about. You know, I have kids, I have to provide, I have a wife, I have to go to work. Yeah, I don't like my job. I work all the time and I'm in a cubicle and I'm miserable, but I bring enough money home to, you know, to provide the lifestyle that I want, even though I'm, you know, miserable or whatever. It's like, okay, well, now you know that that's not the truth, that you can go and do whatever you want. Like, you can go, like, you can make a job out of anything, right? Like, look around you. I mean, people are doing the craziest things and making money off of it to survive, you know? And so I think the next thing is to find out what you're passionate about, to bring in an income and go do it. You know, that a few weeks ago, I told you I went through that class where it was like a weekend seminar thing. And the person that was giving it, he was the motivational speaker, if you will. He was the teacher, whatever. He was and is an inventor. And so his whole life, he's been an inventor, and he started a company helping people patent stuff and invent stuff. And he's like, once I went through this program all the way through, he's like, even though I thought, you know, that I had stage fright and I thought that I wasn't a good speaker and I wasn't able and adequate, and once I got rid of all that and started and came into this new belief, he's like, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And so now he gets paid to do these, you know, classes. And I think he's still doing inventing stuff, but like, he found his passion in life. He found his calling. And then he said, I'm going to do that. And he did it. And so I think that's what it is like, what are you passionate about? What do you want to create? What motivates you to get out of bed? Go and do that and find a way to be great at it and find a way to draw income either off of it or draw income so that you can do it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's good. Yeah. Find something. And it's obviously different for everybody. I mean, shoot, there might be people out there who say, you know what, they might be in a time in their lives to say, hey, maybe I don't want to go work. I want to go travel for 6 months. I mean, I just saw a really cool video of a woman who quit her job, saved up some money, quit her job, built a like a tiny home that was on wheels,
Yeah.
and she just spent like 6 months or a year just traveling. And gosh, if that's what you want to do, go do it. And I think that is so powerful and a great example because, man, I know people personally who talk about doing something and they don't do it. You will talk to them a year later and they're still doing the same thing. And dude, that is just fear. It's fearful because when you step out to go do something new, go into the unknown, you get that feeling of, but then that's just a lack of faith. It's like, man, it'll be okay. Just go do it. Who are you what are you preserving your life for? You're not really preserving anything. You're just dying. If you're unhappy and you're not doing what you want to do and you don't feel free, then you're literally just a corpse walking around in just a really big coffin. Really, you're just walking around a giant coffin. And you're dead. You're drudging about and you're grasping on a cheap entertainment just to kind of get some neurons stimulated because for whatever you're watching. But I think that's it, man. I think it's the spark. Where's the spark for your life? It's like, man, we get too complacent with our redundancy, our just routines, and we lose the spark. We just you get so, it's almost like monotony. You just every day the same thing, and you fall in this thing, and it just becomes a comfort thing. It's like it just feels comfortable to be at such cognitive ease. I don't have to use my brain at all. I just go about my day. It's like, where's the spark at? Like, you do realize where you are in the universe, man. You're on a ball in space, and nobody knows how we got here. Nobody knows a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff we don't know. And I love that. I love knowing that, man, we know a lot. Like, we're really cool. I look at the stuff we can create. Like, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. But there is still so much we don't know. And I love that mysteriousness. I love that. I feel totally comfortable putting my mind in those places where it's like, wow, that's scary. Where I know as like I could talk to somebody like, for example, my mom, who when she starts thinking about space, she goes, oh, no, I don't want to think about that. That's too scary. I say, you know what? Give it to me full throttle, man. Like, I want to know. I want to look into that universe, and I want to feel that because deep down inside, I know that there's nothing to be fearful of. So, but that is up to the individual.
Well,
to find that spark, to find that passion.
Yes, but I will say this. It is, but one thing that Bruce Lipton says, and I've known it to be true to some degree, is that you can only be held accountable to so much as far as what you know. And so if you don't know that you're able to do these things, or that you are in a routine that can be broken, or that you're capable of doing more, if you're unaware of that, right, and you just think that this is life, that look around, everybody's doing what I'm doing, and you don't have a point of, reference to draw from, then you can't be held guilty for doing that. And so like if it comes across as you talking down to those people, right? It's not their fault because we were in the same thing. Yes. And so one thing that I've been wanting to say for a while now about this in this conversation, but this is a great time to say it, is when so Bruce said, what is your subconscious telling you? Be conscious of that. What do you like? be aware. What is it telling you that's limiting and not empowering and sabotaging? And here's the thing that I realized, it's profound, it's ugly, it sucks, and it's real, is that we talked about being addicted to bad feelings and bad, like misery loves company and all that.
Yeah.
And so I found out that I enjoy is not the right word because I don't enjoy it, but I am addicted to these horrible thoughts of the divorce and what happened to me, like, and the separation, because I can go into those and actually like be comfortable, you know, and take the train of thought farther and farther and farther, you know. And it's like, even though it's sick, it makes me sick to think like where, you know, what happened and where I am now with it all. And it's like, well, why am I still daydreaming about that? You know, why am I letting my thoughts go to that? And it's because I'm addicted, because they're familiar. It's what I know.
Yes.
And so
That is that's so cool you said that. Yeah.
so that's and I like, I've been aware of that philosophy, that teaching for a month now or 2 months now, and I haven't broken it, right?
Yes.
And it's like, so that's when I was aware, like, oh, you know, my thoughts are telling me, or my subconscious is telling me, like, this is, you know, like, this is normal and this is what I'm used to and whatever. And it's like, no, get out and stop. And so eventually I want that, and it will be the norm, where I'm not like, actually, it's almost like this is not a accurate way to describe it. It is not a fair way to say it, but just for like hyperbole, to exaggerate, to make a point, like, I love being miserable. I enjoy it so much, man. Like, I meditate on it, being miserable, all the time. I call negative thoughts up all the time and really fantasize about how bad my life is. Like, you know what I mean? I do that all the time. And not, like I said, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but it's like, when you look at it at face value, that's what you're doing. When you sit there, because like a song will come on and it'll remind me of a very specific time, you know, that something happened in my life that was nasty. And instead of being like, okay, go to another thought, I can find myself sitting in that thought for 5-10 minutes. And it's like, why am I still here? Why am I not combating this?
So, isn't that so amazing? It's like,
It seems like the creator put this tool in place in it to make it seem like to sabotage us. You know, it almost seems like that's like, man, like, why do I find comfort in such horrible, depressive circumstances? Familiarity, yes. And it's like, okay, look, God works in incredible ways, but it is scary that, I have close people in my family where I see them, that downward spiral, and it's like, wow, it's getting bad, and then it gets really bad, and then I realize, you talk to somebody who's in that position and you say, hey man, don't you want to get better? Like, you do know something. And even if they know that they have the choice, it's the fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. So that's where it gets scary, because when you are very familiar with that darkness, the light is an unfamiliar territory. And guess what? We fear what we don't know. So I'm going to go back to depression, because I feel good there. Like, I know, I'm familiar with the energy. Like, it's home to me. Yeah. It's like when somebody, maybe they grew up in the worst ghetto their whole life, and then they got an opportunity where they can move to some like affluent or some beautiful paradise somewhere, but then they're like, this is alien to me. I don't feel good. Like, I'm vibrating. Everything's so familiar. Yeah. I'm going to go back, and then they end up in the ghetto again. Mm-hmm. Why does the abused girlfriend keep going back to the abuser boyfriend? It's like I don't know how to conduct myself around somebody who treats me really well. I feel like this is not familiar.
But it's subconscious. That's what I'm talking about, is they're not guilty, because they will tell you consciously, oh, I hate this. Yes. I don't want this. Yes. It's subconsciously that's like, no, you like this. You love it. Go back to that thought. Like, let's really Remember, let's visualize what happened when that, how'd that make you feel? Oh, you like this, but you're saying like, oh, I hate thinking about this. And it's like the dog that keeps going back to its vomit and eating it. And
Yeah.
it's like,
the feeling is the same. Look, either if it's going to an abusive boyfriend or an abusive or abusive toxic girlfriend, the feeling's no different than being like driving your car and you're like, oh, I'm hungry, and you just pull into that same fast food place that you always go to. Yeah. It's like, I'm not gonna get on my phone and look like Yelp a new place and like really try to discover new good quality food. Man, I'm just gonna go back to where I know where I'm going. I know the menu. I know that number 3 medium with this drink is gonna make me feel really good because it never fails, and it's that familiar. You're not gonna be throwing any kind of like wrench in the engine of your repetitive doings.
you're gonna love this book,
Biology.
Honeymoon Effect.
Honeymoon Effect. So, and so that's the key, man. And here's the great thing. The great thing is developing new habits. You can develop them, and new habits eventually will just become the familiar. You just have to make that push.
That's the key.
Make the push, right?
Goya.
So, yeah, Goya. So, man, feeling good, doing heightened states of vibrational frequency, and then, man, we can get into some really cool stuff too. I mean, we'll probably end here in a little bit.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel really good about what we've said so far.
Yeah.
So, like, any closing thoughts as
Yeah.
far as like, I don't want to get into anything deeper or on a more tangent, because I wrote down some stuff that I could say that would open up a thing, but man, I feel like we just really hit home on where we are right now.
Yeah. And so, so I'll just wrap up with at least my thoughts are, so we're starting to do video, which the camera is still rolling. Production quality, like I said many times before, it's gonna go up. It'll be a bumpy ride up, but it's gonna take some time as we get more gear and maybe another facility to shoot in. But look, here's the point, man. You want to surround yourself by positive thinking. And okay, so I want to real quick talk about how you were saying, you can't blame other people for just not being aware. And look, I'm not some lofty person.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is the same thing that the guy or girl was doing when she did her YouTube video, and I was receiving the message saying, heck yeah, like that's good stuff. Why not share it?
Yep.
And so here's the thing: it's 2 birds with 1 stone. One, whoever's observing can take away from this what they need, or just turn it off and say, this is stupid, I'm going to something else. But if you're listening, then that's great, because you're absorbing something that is beneficial, whether you know it or not. Number 2 is we're creating our own vibrational state by doing this. This is why we're doing this, because we could be watching TV right now, or we could be thinking about negative things right now. But hey, why not build a platform where we can sit and just create this energy? Because this right here, right now, is having an effect. Mm-hmm. And so I would rather do this right now than anything else, because it's just elevating.
It's 11:17 on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I was talking to John before I came over here, and I was dead tired. I almost canceled. I was like almost like on the verge of going to. I drove 10 hours Friday. It's Saturday right now. Got up early. Spent a whole day with my kids, and I was like, man, I deserve to go to bed. I like laid down on my floor and like had to talk myself out of it because I knew the rewards. And here I am. Yeah. And you're right. Like I'm already on cloud 9. Like, as far as vibrations go and stuff. And I want to go tick on the world now. Yeah. And that's part of like what you said. You got to just go do it. Mm-hmm. Create habits, because this is habitual. We've been doing this habitually. And this is for us,
right? Yeah.
First and foremost, and it's working.
Yeah. So creating physical habits, like physically, what are you doing every day? But I think even most importantly, what are the habits of your mind? Where does your mind go? Even if you gosh, even if it just takes being grateful for something, then spend your mind's time on that. Because man, there's so much we can focus on, especially when we're watching 30 screens. Our phones are blowing up left and right, and we have so much just ripping us in so many directions. It's like the mind just focus on that positive plane, that direction. So, cool. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
See you.